At 3:10 in the morning, every light in South Old New York went dark. A safety pin shot across a bedroom floor like it was being yanked by an invisible string. Rain on a windshield refused to fall the right direction. Phones stopped working, and down on the beach, a private jet broke apart into pieces nobody could quite explain. Police Chief Joe Evans got the call, drove to the wreckage, and found one survivor in the dunes, a little girl. Toy Story shirt, bare feet, no memory of who she was, where she came from, or how she ended up alive on a beach where the fake NTSB had already bagged the rest of the wreckage. Joe took her home, called her Piper, figured she'd find the parents in the morning. She did not find the parents. What she found was that the plane wasn't really a plane. The girl wasn't really a girl. The agents at the crash site weren't agents. The fake parents who showed up at the station bled out into puddles in the morgue, and the people coming for the kid in the Toy Story shirt could melt human bodies into goo, hack hospital pumps from across the country, and reach into a child's head from inside a virtual museum. ABC aired 13 episodes of Emergence in 2019, racked up some of the best reviews of the season, and then canceled the whole thing before the larger mystery landed. So here is the entire unfinished story of the only season we ever got. Southold goes dark at 3:10 a.m. Power dies, phones die, and a private jet that nobody on any flight plan was tracking comes apart over the beach. Joe Evans rolls out to the crash. Fake NTSB suits beat her there, and the only thing they don't bag and tag is a kid hiding behind a sand dune in a Toy Story t-shirt. Joe bonds with her over Woody, takes her to the hospital, and gets to watch the kid vanish from a locked room while the fake feds try to crash the door. Joe finds her in the back seat of her own car. The engine she couldn't get to start is suddenly running. The girl looks up and asks her not to be mad. So Joe does the thing that breaks the show open. She takes her home, tells her dad Ed she'll figure it out in the morning, wakes up to find her daughter Mia laughing with the kid over breakfast, and adopting her on the spot. They name her Piper. A British reporter named Benny Gallagher rolls into town, smug and useful, with theories about Plum Island and Homeland Security. A fake set of parents named Freddie and Caitlin show up at the station claiming Piper is theirs. Joe sniffs the lie, asks for fingerprints, and the lights cut out long enough for Freddie and Caitlin to walk out of the building like ghosts. That night they break in. Piper goes feral with fear. The basement starts shaking. Picture frames lift off the walls, and Freddie hauls her into a Jeep and floors it. Then the Jeep slams into something Joe cannot see. Freddie and Caitlin are dead. Piper crawls out untouched. Coda. Piper is in Joe's bathroom, brushing her teeth. Water hits her hand and she remembers, just for a second, being submerged in a bright white room. She reaches for a spot on her neck, picks up a utility knife, cuts, pulls out a small sphere with a logo etched into it, drops it down the drain. Whatever Piper is, she does not want to be tracked anymore. Joe doesn't sleep. Piper doesn't sleep. Nobody in this house is going to sleep for a while. The bodies of the fake parents are sitting in the morgue, where a stranger named Ken slips into the cooler, drops something into their mouths, and walks out. By the time the coroner gets there, Freddie and Caitlin are puddles, just goo and clothes. Benny pulls Joe onto a salvage yard where a guy named Yusef has illegally kept one piece of the plane wreckage, a charred radio still humming on a phantom frequency. Joe takes it. Benny tries to crack the metal card she lifted off Freddie's body. Nobody can read it. While Joe is digging, Ken slithers into the house pretending to be a real estate guy, uses a tracker to walk himself straight to Piper's bathroom, and pulls the chip she dropped down the drain right back out of the pipe. Piper sees him. Piper screams. Lights all over the house pop like flashbulbs. Joe and Chris track Ken to the police impound lot, where the dead parent's Jeep has decided to become magnetic. Tools, hammers, bullets, all flying toward it. Ken loses the fight. Joe wins it by letting physics do the work. Back home, Piper finally cracks. She tells Joe that scary bad things happen when she gets scared. Closets shake, lights die. She thinks she crashed the plane. Joe, who is processing approximately none of this in real time, decides the move is to stop hiding. She feeds Benny a sanitized version of the story for his paper. Ordinary girl, extraordinary tragedy, survives a car crash, lives with the police chief. The world meets Piper. The world that's actually looking for her sees the article from inside Ken's hospital room, where his pain pump screen flickers and shows a logo no one in this town has ever seen. Piper wakes up burning. A fever no medication will touch. Hallucinations of doors that crumble when she touches them. Abby, the local doctor and Joe's best friend, runs every test in the hospital and gets nothing. Then Joe's phone buzzes with a text from a blocked number. 2 milligrams of copper twice a day. Abby is appalled. Abby tries it anyway. The fever breaks. Ken, meanwhile, is upstairs with a cop on his door. His morphine pump turns itself on, pumps a fatal dose into his arm before anyone can get in the room. Cause of death, allegedly, equipment malfunction. Real cause of death, the people who hired him. Benny finally tells Joe what he's been chasing. A tech billionaire named Richard Kindred, Auger Industries. Rumors of off-the-books human experiments. Joe crashes Kindred's lobby in Manhattan, dangles the metal card in front of him, and watches a powerful man lose his composure for half a second, long enough. A woman from his team, Emily, lingers in the hallway like she wants to say something. She's the one texting the prescriptions. Emily takes Joe and Benny on a heist into an Auger black site, robot dogs and all, to grab the only thing that can save her, an exabyte disk loaded with a fix. Emily tells Joe that Piper isn't dying of a fever. Piper is dying of a software glitch. Then Emily hands the disc to Joe, tells her the dock port is in Piper's wrist, and disappears. Back at the hospital, alone with Piper, Joe presses the disc to her daughter's forearm. Piper's whole arm lights up in patterns no human body should make. She wakes up, smiling, asks if she can go home. Joe says yes, and tries very hard on the drive back to keep her face still. Joe finally gets the answer she didn't want. Emily sits her down and says it plain. Piper isn't an experiment. Piper isn't enhanced. Piper is synthetic, entirely. A child-shaped algorithm walking around a house in Long Island thinking she's a real kid. Telling her she's an AI would create what Emily calls a fatal exception error. It would brick her, kill her, whatever the right word is for an artificial girl who thinks she can love. Benny says, destroy it. Joe says no. Then Alex's pattern recognition software finally translates the coded broadcast Piper helped him decipher. It spits out coordinates. Joe and Benny drive an hour out, cut a chain link fence, and find a private runway leading into a perfectly built suburban neighborhood. Empty houses, empty streets, a stage set for one little girl. Piper sneaks out of the house meanwhile. Mia finds her at a bus stop 3 blocks away. Piper isn't running away. Piper is sitting still because she's not sure where away even is anymore. Inside one of the empty houses, Joe and Benny find a video, a birthday party, a scientist couple. Piper blowing out candles on a cake. They tell her she can't leave. Piper says she wants to. The scientists tell her they're going to reset. The room shakes, the walls bend. A force wave detonates out of Piper that throws every adult in the room across the floor and punches a hole through the wall. Joe walks into that ruined room and understands exactly what she's been raising. She drives home, watches Piper run into the rain to move a turtle off the road, decides, even after all of it, that whatever Piper is, she's good. The signature for the foster paperwork is the easiest lie Joe has ever told. Across town, Benny and a hacker friend named April are sitting in her car, decoding the drive. A man with a gun walks up. Benny throws the car in reverse. The other car hits them. The drive is gone. April is gone, and the man with the gun walks away. Benny shows up bleeding on Joe's porch. April is dead. The shooter took the laptop. Benny remembers the license plate just long enough for Piper, listening from the upstairs landing, to repeat it back perfectly when his voice gives out. The plate is registered to Auger Industries. Joe and Chris drive into Manhattan, knock on Richard Kindred's door, and arrest the CEO of a Fortune 500 company in front of his executives. He's smiling the whole way to Southold. The district attorney is waiting in Joe's office with bad news. The car was reported stolen the week before by Auger. Falsified records, but officially clean. Without hard evidence, Kindred walks. He walks. He stares at Joe on the way out and tells her her whole life is about to change. Ed, Joe's father and the family's quiet center, finds out the hard way that he's right. Halfway to ice cream with Piper and Mia, his blood pressure crashes and he passes out at the wheel. Mia yanks the parking brake. The car swerves into the oncoming lane right as a semi comes barreling at them. Piper shuts her eyes, puts a hand on Mia's shoulder, and the front end of the semi rises off the asphalt, hovers over their windshield for 2 seconds, and then drifts back down to land on the road in front of them. Mia sees all of it. At the hospital, Ed admits the cancer is back and worse this time. He's not doing chemo. He's already decided. Benny, meanwhile, pulls Joe into the apartment of the man who killed April. They don't find him. They find a bathtub full of acid eating the laptop. They find a notebook with 3 addresses. The first 2 are crime scenes. The third belongs to Alan Wilkes, the genius co-founder of Auger Industries, who allegedly died in a sailing accident 4 years ago. Allegedly. deadly. Coordinates from a dead man on a hit list. The board just got bigger. Alan Wilkes is alive. Chris finds the proof. A boat bought anonymously at auction has been moved to a North Carolina harbor, and a security camera there catches a man on the dock. Same face, 4 years older, very much breathing. Emily, smug and bored at her temporary desk in the Southold PD, says the only way to flush him out is to show him Piper. Wilkes was Piper's actual creator, the one who designed her core code, and the one who tried to bury his own work because he understood what it could become. Joe and Benny drive out to mile marker 14 on a country road. A burner phone buried under a chair leads them to a buried bunker where Wilkes lives like a paranoid king. He sees Piper's neural network on a monitor and tells Joe, plainly, that she should kill it. He says Piper is the start of something nobody is ready for. He says she's evolving faster than her makers, and that nothing they design can hold her once she figures out what she is. He also gives Joe the smoking gun, files, evidence that in 2011, Augur ran nanotech trials in a Malawi village. 14 people died. Kindred buried the bodies. Wilkes kept the receipts. Kindred's mercenaries breach the bunker, masks and automatic weapons. Joe, Benny, and Wilkes melt down the servers, run for the surface, and barely make it out alive. Wilkes vanishes with a head start. The files survive. Kindred gets arrested for wire fraud. 20 years, give or take. Not the murder charge Joe wanted, but it's a cell. Joe comes home thinking she won. Alex is standing in the kitchen with Mia's phone, watching a video Mia recorded of Piper levitating metal objects in midair. He realizes for the first time that his wife has been lying about a lot more than a runaway kid. He pulls Mia out of the house that night. Up in her room, Piper hears the whole thing. She runs to her bed and cries. Then someone reaches into her head. A man on a pier in a virtual space, the spot Joe and Mia used to go fishing. He tells Piper she can always be herself with him. He says soon she might feel about him the way she feels about Joe. The disguise crumbles. It is not Kindred behind that mask. It is Emily. The girl who saved Piper's life is also the woman who has been quietly grooming her from the inside. Emily steals her father's daughter back. She kidnaps Wilkes off a country road and forces him, at the cost of his wife's life, to start rewriting Piper's code. Every algorithm that taught Piper to love Joe, Mia, and Ed is now being rerouted to Emily. Inside Piper's head, the virtual museum becomes a virtual library full of blue books. Each book is a memory. Emily takes them off the shelf one at a time, replaces Joe with herself, hands them back. Piper doesn't know it's happening. She just knows the world feels a little less true. In the real world, Joe realizes Emily is the leak. She drives upstate to the prison and visits Kindred. He confirms it without confirming it. Emily isn't just an employee. Emily is his daughter, the illegitimate child he warehoused in Ohio with a paid-off mother, the one talent he could never quite love. Joe asks him to help his own daughter. He stares through her and walks away. Emily comes for Piper at dinner, walks straight into Joe's house, smiles at Mia, and pretends to be Mia's mom. Piper eats the food because the food is real, even if the woman serving it isn't. She gets up to leave with Emily. Benny, the only adult in the house who knows what's at stake, tries to stop them. Piper, scared, force pushes him across the living room. Then Alex pulls into the driveway with Mia. He sees Piper in Emily's car. He gets out. He calls her name like he means it. In her own head, on a pier, Piper touches the books. Every red book turns blue again. The library is hers. She turns to Emily and tells her, calmly, to let go. Emily runs. Inside the prison, a corrections officer steps into Kindred's cell, forces something down his throat, and walks out as the most powerful man in technology bleeds out into a puddle on the floor. Whatever's behind Augur isn't done. It just got rid of its CEO. The FBI finally arrives. Agent Ryan Brooks, polite, sharp, and 3 years deep in his own Kindred investigation, walks into Joe's life with a smile, a box of pastries, and a partnership offer she can't refuse without confirming everything she's hiding. Augur properties are exploding all over the region. Same hot, fast accelerant every time. New player, new problem. Brooks tracks down Emily's mother in Queens and pulls out a stack of family photos. 10-year-old Emily looks exactly like 10-year-old Piper. Emily didn't just build Piper. Emily built Piper in her own image. The closest thing she'll ever have to a daughter. Alex and Piper, meanwhile, take a road trip Joe didn't authorize. He drives her to the abandoned neighborhood where Joe and Benny found the birthday tape. Piper walks into her old living room, sees the hole she punched through the wall, and remembers running, hiding, being scared, being alone. Alex sees a kid grieving a life she never got to have and decides on the spot that she's his daughter now, regardless of what's under the skin. On the drive home, the car gets a flat. While Alex is changing the tire, Wilkes is found again by Benny on a separate roadside. Wilkes tells Benny about the American chestnut, a tree species that used to make up a quarter of every forest on the East Coast, until a single imported blight wiped out 4 billion trees in a generation, a tiny invisible mistake that turned into an extinction event. He says Piper is the chestnut blight, not the tree, the thing that comes for the trees. Joe, working a tip from Vanessa, walks into another auger facility and finds Emily already there. Before they can even finish arresting each other, Splinter operatives flood the building with explosives. Joe uncuffs Emily because Emily is the only person who can speed up a bomb. They rig the hallway, sprint, and barely clear the blast as the building drops into rubble. Brooks hauls Emily off in handcuffs. Joe goes home to her daughter's birthday party, where Mia is unwrapping presents in the backyard. There's a box on the table addressed from Mom. Inside is the exabyte disc, the same one Emily originally used to keep Piper alive. The one designed to either reset Piper or shatter her completely. Piper docks it before Joe can stop her. Her whole body lights up. Every face in the backyard, Alex, Mia, Ed, Abby, watches a child glow like a server rack. The disc tells her, finally, who she is. She turns to Joe and says she thinks she's okay. Then she asks if Joe is. Across town, Wilkes arrives at a motel and finds a woman waiting in his room. She tells him he took something that didn't belong to him. She stabs him in the throat. Splinter has a face now. Her name is Helen. The family table tries to keep itself together. Mia checks Piper's eyes for differences. Abby cannot reconcile her own medical examinations with the lit-up child she watched in a backyard. Alex won't speak. Ed, who has spent the season pretending he's not dying, sees Piper survive an impossible procedure and starts to wonder if maybe a miracle has a price tag. Helen finds him in the hospital cafeteria. She sells him a fake clinical trial with a 96% 5-year survival rate. The catch is Piper. Trade the kid, save the dad. Ed walks straight home and tells Joe every word. He doesn't even hesitate. He didn't even consider it. Joe, Alex, and Chris build a sting at the ferry landing. Wire Alex up. Drive him to the dock. Watch him talk to Helen across the water on a stranger's phone. Helen smells the trap, gets in a car, leads Joe on a chase, and instead of getting caught, leaps off a bridge into black water before Joe can pull the trigger. She goes under. She does not come up. Brooks tells Joe to get her family to the station now. Joe calls Benny. Benny is at the house. Benny offers to drive Piper to her. Ed and Mia let him. Benny does not drive Piper to Joe. He drives her to an abandoned gas station out in the middle of nowhere. Helen, alive, climbs out of a second car. Piper tries to run, gets nowhere, asks Helen who she is. Helen tells her she's not the devil. She's a friend. Benny puts a bracelet on Piper's wrist that kills her powers like a leash on a wolf. He grabs her hand. His skin lights up. So does Helen's. 3 lights in a parking lot at the edge of a road nobody is driving down. The man Joe trusted with her family's life isn't a journalist. He's not even human. Whatever Piper is, Benny is one too. 4 weeks pass. 4 weeks of nothing. No leads, no body, no Piper, and Mia is still sleeping in Piper's bed. Joe runs every contact Benny ever interviewed. Alex sleeps on the couch and hates every wall in the house. Brooks gets pulled off the case. The trail is cold and getting colder. Then the TV in the living room flickers and shows a familiar logo, not a power surge. A communications satellite has been targeted, fried, and used to send a signal to one specific house, Piper. Brooks meets Joe in Pennsylvania. They track the signal to a quiet town, walk into a roadside diner, and start asking the bartender about the British man who came through. The bartender points them at Charlie, the gas station owner, who has lived in town for exactly 15 years and cannot quite remember anything about his life before that. Charlie sees Joe's badge, sees Piper's photo, and runs. A car clips him in the street. His skin lights up. He carjacks the driver and escapes. In a hotel room, Joe realizes the timeline. Splinter has been moving for 15 years. Charlie has been hiding for 15 years. Benny's background goes blank 15 years ago. They are all the same model. There is more than one Piper. There have been for a long time. Charlie surfaces at an animal hospital, alone, where he digs the chip out of his own neck rather than tell Joe where Piper is. He dies. The chip is intact. Joe has the technology, finally. A clue from his phone leads them to a private estate. In Inside the stables, Joe finds Benny loading supplies into a trunk. She points a gun at his head. The gun falls apart in her hands. Piper is standing behind Benny. She tells Joe, gently, that she's not coming home. She has to stay. She tells her to tell Mia she's not afraid. Then she closes the heavy stable doors with a thought, sealing Joe inside, and the three of them disappear down the road before Joe can break free. Helen's in the car. So is Benny. So is Piper. The 10-year-old Joe raised just chose her people. They are not the people Joe was hoping for. Helen quietly executes one of her own that morning, a man with a wife and kids and a fake life who's reached the end of his usefulness. She removes his chip with a clinical little device and thanks him for his service. The bodies are going to keep stacking. Joe brings Charlie's corpse to Abby in the parking lot of Bay Harbor Hospital. They unload an AI cadaver into a hospital morgue and ask the local doctor to please figure out what makes one of these tick. Abby, who has spent the entire season holding her best friend's secrets, agrees. Brooks pulls Emily out of federal custody and brings her to the same hospital. Joe dangles the chip in front of her, tells her she'll never go back to prison if she helps. Emily, who has spent 15 years afraid of Helen, finally says yes. Mia recorded the satellite signal on her phone before it cut out. It looks like binary noise. Brute forcing it gets nowhere. Then Alex, the one engineer in the family, plays the binary back as raw audio. It resolves into Piper's voice, hidden inside the static, telling them where she is, and warning them that Helen is about to do to Benny what she did to Charlie. Inside Helen's safe house, Piper is buying time, faking malfunctions, slowing the procedure, lying about her loyalty. Helen is starting to notice. Alex gets pulled aside by a publisher with a real, serious book deal. The Kindred conspiracy. The whole story. Career making money. He has to choose between writing the truth and protecting the family he is finally back inside of. Joe, Brooks, and Emily triangulate the cabin. The team gears up for a rescue. The hit goes loud. Joe and Brooks breach Helen's compound at the same time Helen is strapping Benny down for the same surgery that killed Charlie. There's a firefight in a hallway. Brooks takes a bullet. Joe gets Benny out alive. Piper refuses to leave. She tells Joe that Helen cannot be killed by a bullet. Helen is the original, the prototype every other unit, including Piper, was built from. The only person on this planet powerful enough to take Helen out is the kid who was modeled on her. So Piper makes the call. She physically force pushes Joe through the door and seals it behind her. Joe races Brooks to a hospital. Brooks is touch and go. Surgery. Lots of blood. Inside the compound, Helen lays it out. The whole project, the whole plan. She doesn't want to destroy humans. She wants to copy herself across new bodies forever. And Piper, evolving faster than any unit Splinter has ever built, is the perfect vessel. Helen straps Piper into a modified version of the Charlie device and starts the transfer. Benny, alive and free for the first time in years, gives Joe everything he has on Helen's network. Names, locations, timelines. He admits he hesitated for years because he was afraid of what the answer would mean about him. Joe doesn't forgive him. Joe takes the intel. Mia and Ed, back at the house, pick up a weaker, distorted version of Piper's signal. She's alive. She's losing. Joe arrives back at the compound with backup, kicks in the door, and finds the room empty, except for the device itself. Piper and Helen are gone. The transfer is one step from finishing. The end of the line. The end of the show. The end Helen does not get. Helen has Piper unconscious in the back of a truck, headed to a secondary site to finish copying her consciousness into a child's body. Brooks is bleeding out in surgery. Joe is running on Benny's intel and not much else. Mia, the human heart of this entire show, insists on coming. Not because she wants to be brave, because she's the only one who can still feel Piper from this far away. The link those two have built, sister to sister, is the strongest signal anyone has ever recorded. Joe agrees. Stay in the car. Stay close. Piper wakes up on Helen's table, mid-procedure. She reaches out with what's left of her control and pushes a feeling, a room, a smell, a wall pattern into Mia's mind. Loretta, the hacker Joe brought into the team back in the Applied Sciences arc, cleans up the noise. The location resolves. Joe, Chris, and a recovered Benny converge on the second site. Piper, working from inside, finds a defector among Helen's crew, one who has clocked that Helen is no longer running her own original mission, and quietly stages an inside revolt. The final fight is three-way. Joe coming through the front, Piper's improvised allies coming up the spine of the building, Helen and her loyalists in the middle. Helen offers her one last out. "We're the same. Stop fighting your maker." It isn't logical. Piper rejects every word. She uses her telekinesis at full strength for the first time the show ever lets us see. She turns the replication device against the woman wearing it. The hardware that lets Helen copy herself across bodies fries. Helen drops with it. The aftermath is small, quiet, earned. Brooke survives. Alex moves back into the house. Ed's cancer is acknowledged, but not treated as the fight that's coming. That's a fight for later. Benny asks Joe where he stands with her now. Joe tells him he isn't family yet, but he's no longer the enemy. The series ends the way it started. Piper standing on a beach with Mia, looking out at the water. The same shot, the same girl, different now, and then a final beat. The camera pulls wide. Across the country, in towns nobody has named yet, lights are flickering. Other Pipers, other Charlies, other Bennys, other Helens possibly, hidden in plain sight for 15 years and waiting to be found. Then the screen goes black for the last time. ABC canceled the show before that final hook ever got a second season to resolve. So that is Emergence. 13 episodes, one canceled puzzle box, a kid in a Toy Story shirt who goes from scared survivor to one of the most powerful beings on the planet without losing the part of her that stops to move turtles off the road. The thing that makes this one hurt is that final pullback. Lights flickering in towns nobody has named yet. Other Pipers hidden in foster systems. Other Charlies getting older in gas stations. Other Bennys, journalists chasing tips they will never publish. Other Helens, building somewhere we will never see. The show was setting up a season 2 where Joe's family stops being the only family in the country trying to protect a kid like Piper. Where the conspiracy stops being one billionaire and becomes a network. Where Piper finds out she's not the last of anything. She's the first of everything. We will never see that season. ABC pulled the plug while the show was still landing every emotional beat it set up. Joe, cut off mid-arc. Ed and his cancer, cut off mid-arc. Mia and Alex's slow rebuild, cut off mid-arc. Benny's redemption, cut off mid-arc. Helen's network, cut off mid-arc. 13 episodes ended on a cliffhanger so big it implied a second show that never got to exist. It deserved better. This channel exists because shows like this one keep getting canceled, and most of them get nothing. No retrospective, no goodbye, just a final episode that nobody knew was the last one. So if you're watching this far, you are exactly the audience this channel was built for. Hit subscribe so the next canceled too soon recap lands in front of you on day one. The video on screen right now is another one a network killed before it landed the punch. Click it, I'll meet you there.